I wouldn't normally do this, but since the series is called From Death to Life, I was thinking about a death that happened this past week. And I'm sure every one of you have heard about this, and it is the death of Pope Francis. And again, I wouldn't typically do this, but just because of this week and the name of the series, can I just tell you for a moment the time that the Pope invited me to the Vatican? I got invited in 2017, and he wanted to have a little bit of a conversation with a few pastors. And so I went, and as I was preparing to go, I didn't know what I should bring. I was like, should I bring him a Bible? Then I thought, he probably has enough Bibles. Should I bring him a candle? He probably has enough candles. And then I decided, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna bring him a Chicago Cubs jersey. And so this is me handing the Pope, and then he looks at me, and this is no joke what he says. I have it recorded on my phone. He says, he looks at me and he goes, preach. Don't ever stop preaching. The world needs better preaching. Preach Jesus, preach good news. And then he walks away with my Cubs jersey. And I find myself going, have you ever brought a gift to someone and then what they give you back is wildly more? And that's honestly how I feel every time I come to Gateway. I get to preach, but man, what you all put into me, such an honor. And so today, what I want to do is, because some of you know this, I played college basketball, and play's not the right word. I sat the bench, but I got free shoes. There are these moments where you find yourself at the end of the first quarter, and the coach just kind of calling you into the huddle. And that's what I really believe. You've just finished the first 25 years. You finished the first quarter. And if I could just have a moment where we just kind of huddle up and just say, hey, what is actually gonna be our plan for the next 25 years? What is actually gonna be our call for the next 25 years? What kind of people are we gonna be that move from death to life? What kind of people will we choose to be? And so what I wanna do today is I wanna look at 4 stories from the life of Joshua. Because I believe that these 4 stories will be a clarion call for every single one of you. Wherever you are in your faith journey, you will know the play when you leave this place. The kind of people that Gateway is and will be for decades to come. So if you have a Bible, turn with me to Exodus chapter 33, and we're gonna just kind of walk through the entirety of Scripture. We'll get done about 4:15 today. It's gonna be awesome. But Exodus 33 verse 7 says this, now Moses used to take a tent and pitch it outside the camp some distance away, calling it the tent of meeting. Very, very clear, Captain Obvious. This is the tent of meeting with God. Anyone inquiring of the Lord would go to the tent of meeting outside the camp. And whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people rose and stood at the entrances to their tents, watching Moses until he entered the tent. As Moses went into the tent, the pillar of cloud, so like the presence of God, would come down and stay at the entrance while the Lord spoke with Moses. Whenever the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance to the tent of meeting, they all stood and worshiped, each at the entrance to their own tent. Verse 11, the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. Then Moses would return to the camp, but his young aide, Joshua, son of Nun, not son of a nun, because that'd be weird, but son of Nun, did not leave the tent. So get this is the scene. Moses leaves his tent and he's walking outside of the camp, and everyone stands to their feet because he knows he's gonna actually go to the tent of meeting. He's gonna have a conversation with God, and they stand in sheer expectation, and they wait and they wait and they wait. And then all of a sudden Moses leaves the tent. He's heard from the Lord, and now he's gonna deliver that message to the people. But that one verse, it's the first time we ever meet Joshua in the scriptures. It says, this young aide Joshua did not leave the tent. It's like Moses, his leader, left, but Joshua didn't want to leave the presence of God. And Gateway Church, my brothers and sisters, may you crave the presence of God. May you never stop craving and yearning and longing for the presence of God. May you find yourself getting swept up, not just on a Sunday morning, on a Tuesday afternoon in the marketplace, and a Wednesday lunch in the cafeteria, and a Thursday walk in the neighborhood, and a Friday watching your Texas Rangers win. Whatever it is, may you find yourself swept up just going, God is already here, and crave his presence. But it continues on. Turn with me to the book of Numbers, which I know you all were reading this morning. Numbers chapter 13. This is another story of the life of Joshua. And Numbers chapter 13 is fascinating because this is a little bit like the Hebrew Hunger Games. And what I mean by that is you're gonna have a moment where Moses and the Jewish people are about to go and take possession of the land that God had promised. But they didn't know what it looked like. All they had was what God had told them this land was like. It's a land overflowing with milk and honey. So Moses chooses one man from each of the 12 tribes, and these 12 spies go. But before they go, Moses says, hey, bring me back some grapes. Tell me, is it like what God told us to be? There's no Wi-Fi, there's no drones. All they have will be the reports of these spies. And so these 12 spies go. And can you imagine, for decades and decades and decades, hundreds of years, hearing about the land of promise, what it would be like. You would never actually ever ventured in. And now 12 spies, you see them coming back. The entire Hebrew nation comes together to listen to their account. And this is what they say in Numbers chapter 13, verse 33. But the men who had gone up with him said, we can't attack these people. They are stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, the land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. So the majority of the spies, 10 of the 12 spies, start to proclaim, we can't attack them. We can't go into the land of promise. We're like grasshoppers. And then what they're gonna do is they're just gonna step on us. We can't do it. But Caleb and Joshua have another word. And what's so beautiful is we see in chapter 14, starting in verse 6, it says Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh. And if you're ever just reading the Bible publicly and it comes to a word that you cannot pronounce, just read it quickly and with authority and move on. Caleb, son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had explored the land, tore their clothes. So they're the two spies that are going against the other 10. They tear their clothes and said to the entire Israelite assembly, the land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will devour them. Grasshoppers are going to devour the giants. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. And the next verse, in verse 10, it says, but the whole assembly talked about stoning them. So in this moment, Moses is watching. All of the Hebrew nation is watching. 10 people say, we can't do it, man, we can't do it. And then 2 people stand up and they say, yes, we can. Yes, we can. It's not because of us, it is because of our God. It is because of what God can do in and through us. And I think in that moment, Moses must have been watching his young aide and going, man, I'm so grateful he didn't leave the tent. Because that took guts. That took courage to go against where culture was going. And nobody often will drift towards holiness. Nobody drifts towards doing the harder right. It is a conscious day by day choice. And Joshua shows this. And so Gateway Church, my prayer for you as you enter into the second quarter, number one, may you crave God's presence. And number two, may you own the moment. And here's what I mean. For many of us, we live our lives in the past, the present, and the future. But do you know you only have control over one thing? You only have control over one thing, and that's the present reality. See, the enemy wants to make you go back to the past. The enemy wants you to live in the past, and when you live in the past, you live in shame. When you live in the past, you look and your eyes are fixated on what once was. Many people, good, sincere Christ followers, I've been pastoring for 20 plus years. Many good, sincere Christ followers, they're fixated, eyes, heart, mind, body, soul, onto the past, and they are like moonwalking into the present. And they are missing all that God has for them. They are missing the whispers because they're fixated on the shame of yesterday. And some people, though, aren't even able to actually live in the present because they're so caught up in what tomorrow will be. You have no control over tomorrow. It isn't here yet. And when you live in tomorrow, you are often living with anxiety. What's it gonna be like? It's uncertain. I'm not sure. I don't know. What is it gonna be? I don't know. And all the enemy wants you to do is live either in the past or the future and to not be here in the present, because when you're not here in the present, then it's hard for you to be aware of God's presence. And when you are not aware of God's presence, it is very, very difficult for you then to go and own a moment. I remember a number of years ago, I was in Nashville, and we are huge Johnny Cash fans in our family. My daughter, her name is Mercy June Carter. June Carter is the woman who gave the gospel message to Johnny, and he received it. And so I went to go to this house that Johnny used to live in. It's on this lake outside of Nashville, and right next to this house is a house where Roy Orbison, the famous singer-songwriter, Pretty Woman, had his family house. And then right next to that was a party house of Roy Orbison's where much of the music in the 50s and 60s actually were written out of. And there was no electric tools that went into building this old rustic party singer-songwriter house. And then you had the same architect who built Roy Orbison's, and then the same architect who built Johnny Cash's. Well, one day, Roy Orbison's on tour. In his life, there was a lot of just trial, struggle. He lost his wife in a motorcycle accident, but he gets a call, and he finds out that his two boys were playing with fireworks in the property and burned the house down and died. So Roy Orbison returns back to his house, and it's just a pile of rocks. And he looks at Johnny and goes, I can't rebuild here. I lost my wife, I lost my boys. And he sells the property to Johnny for $1. And he says, promise me you won't build on this land. And Johnny says, I promise. So Johnny clears the entire property, gathers some pastors, and what do? They circle around this property and can we pray that somehow this will be a garden where new life will grow? And so if you go to this garden, you still have the party house, you have this garden, and then before Johnny Cash dies, he sold his house to Barry Gibb from the Bee Gees. And Barry Gibb was either working his family or workers too hard that someone out of bitterness fell asleep and burned the house down, or purposely burned Johnny Cash's house down. So now you walk on this property and you have Johnny Cash's house that's a pile of rocks, you have this beautiful garden, and you have this picture of the past. And I think it's fascinating because sometimes in church and sometimes in our faith journey, we just want to go back to that day. Oh man, when those good songs were written. We want to live back there. And then some of us, man, we just want to live out in the future. We want to live out in the future. Man, this someday we can just do all of this. And that comes crumbling down. And all you can do is recognize you're just a garden. And when you begin to start to pray and you start to own the moment, you start to live within the presence of God, new life can actually grow in a beautiful way. What's beautiful about the life of Joshua is that Moses isn't able to enter into the land of promise because of his sin. And Moses has to think of who will succeed him. And I imagine watching Joshua and Caleb stand up against the entire Israel assembly, he said to himself, I think Joshua is the one. But can you imagine being Joshua and you've got to follow the greatest leader in the history of the Hebrew nation? Can you find yourself like wondering, who was the shooting guard that followed Michael Jordan? We don't know his name. Who was the coach that followed John Wooden at UCLA? We don't know their name. And now Joshua's like, wait, me? To follow after Moses? And look what God says in Joshua chapter 1. He says these words that I think are so important for each of us. It says this, verse 1, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people, get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all throughout the Hittite country, to the Mediterranean Sea and to Jackson Hole in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. And as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. And Joshua's like, okay, thanks. And then verse 6, it says, be strong, God says to Joshua, and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. And then he says in verse 7, be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. And keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that when you may be careful to do everything written in it, then you will be prosperous and successful. See, when I write a sermon, I ask questions of the text, but when I meditate on the scripture, I let the text ask questions of me. My heart, my mind, my body, my soul, my way. And what's amazing is what God is saying. He's saying, Joshua, I need you to be strong. I need you to be courageous. I'm not asking you to be Moses. I'm just telling you what I promised Moses, I'm promising to you. But you have to live under the authority of this book. You can't go to the right, to the left. You've got to be fixated on the word, and you've got to be fixated on the promises of God. See, I tell you, Gateway Church, as you enter the second quarter, number one, may you crave God's presence. And number two, may you own the moment. And number three, may you declare God's promises. May you never stop declaring God's promises. And yes, there'll be moments that don't make sense. There will be moments that are difficult, but it's in those moments where the resilience showcases itself, because you find your faith, your trust living in this book and not in yourself. But I need you to see one thing that literally changed everything for me. In verse 9, God says these words, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And this is powerful stuff, friends, because 3 times in 4 verses, God says, be strong and courageous. Be strong and very courageous. Have I not commanded you, Joshua? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. I will be with you. And what you might not know is that phrase in Hebrew for be strong and courageous became the battle cry of the Hebrew nation. You know, like jock jams before like a basketball game, they're like hyping themselves up with like their favorite song as they go through the layup line. This is what the whole nation will begin to do. They would sway and they would say the phrase in Hebrew for be strong and courageous, which is Rak Chazak. It's just so fun to say. And the whole nation would be like, Rak Chazak, Rak Chazak. And what they were saying is to be strong and courageous, not in themselves, but in the God that was with them, God that was for them. And so now Joshua, and God's told him, you are gonna lead the people across the Jordan River. Now Joshua has to go tell the priests and the people what is about to happen. And can you just imagine the insecurity this man must be feeling? Wait. You're gonna have us go across as your first act of a leader, a river? Like, who do you think? You think you're Moses? My man doesn't even have a staff. Like, what are you thinking? And this is what Joshua has to do. And I imagine people saying to him, what word were you given to tell us that we can do this? And Joshua's like, Rak Chazak, be strong and courageous. And I imagine the priest going, I'll Rak Chazak you. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, man. Like, I need you to actually step out and do this. But he even gets more complicated because the adversity so many of us begin to see. But we don't actually see the opportunity that the adversity provides us. And this is a moment in Joshua, if you turn to actual chapter 3 and you read 15 through 17, this is where it gets even more difficult. It says this, now the Jordan, which actually started at the highest point in Israel and goes down to the lowest point, is at flood stage all during the harvest season. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam in the vicinity of Zarethan, while the water flowing down to the sea of the Arabah, that is the Dead Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stopped in the middle of the Jordan and stood on dry ground while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground. So you have this sense where the Ark of the Covenant, and we've been taught this so many times, don't put God in a box, don't put God in the box. Actually, God put himself in a box and it was called the Ark of the Covenant. And you would carry this Ark and it was literally like the presence of God. And so imagine these priests, and these priests are walking and they're like, dude, do you think like Rak Chazak, man? Do you think? I mean, I know we got the presence of God right here, but I mean like Rak Chazak, that water is moving so fast. So fast. Joshua, if I die, you better take care of my kids, man. And literally puts that first foot in and the water stop. And they go halfway through and then the entire nation crosses over. Now, you have to understand, whenever God did something, the Jewish people wanted to celebrate it. So sometimes they would name a place based on God doing something. And they would name that city after what God did. Or sometimes they would build an altar, or they make a sacrifice. Sometimes, like Exodus 15, when they crossed over the Red Sea, they started and wrote the first worship song. But there was another thing that they would often do to allow for the story of what just happened to be retold and retold and re-embodied and re-embodied. Look what it says in Joshua chapter 4, verse 4. It says this, so Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites to serve as a sign among you. See, in the future, when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. So before the priest with the Ark of the Covenant can get to the other side, Joshua says, stay there, guys, stay there. And then he chooses 12 men from each of the tribes and he says, go and pick up the biggest stone that you can find from within the Jordan. And now we're gonna take those stones and we are gonna set them up on the side of the Jordan because they're gonna be this reminder. Now, if you go to Israel, you will see all of these moments where these massive standing stones are. And this is the story of what would happen. Is you would have a rabbi who would be walking with his talmidim, that's the Hebrew word for disciple, or you'd have a father and mother walking with their children when all of a sudden the kid or the disciple would look at the standing stones and what would they say? They'd say, Masavot, Papa, Masavot, Rabbani, Masavot, Mama, Masavot. And Masavot literally mean, what happened here? What happened here? And this is when the rabbi would say, this is when Rak Chazak, Joshua, had the priests, and we crossed over the Jordan into the land of promise. And it became these disciple stories. Or the father or the mother would tell it to their kids, and it would be their children's stories to carry on and share with the next generation. But if you've ever read 1 Peter, have you ever seen how 1 Peter chapter 2 talks about living stones? And he's talking about the kind of people that we are called to be. He says, as you come to him, the living stone, rejected by humans, but chosen by God and precious to him, you also, like living stones, standing stones, are to be built into a spiritual house, Gateway. It'll continue on and says, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. See, once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now, Gateway, you have received mercy. And then it says this, the kind of life we're called to be. It says, dear friends, I urge you as foreigners and exiles to abstain from sinful desires which wage against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. What is Peter saying? Peter's saying that your life in the marketplace, in your school, in your home, in your neighborhood, in traffic, wherever you are a standing stone, and the way that you choose to forgive, the way that you choose to love, the way that you choose to declare God's promises, the way that you choose to encourage, someone should look at your life and say, Masavot. What happened here? And 1 Peter chapter 3, what does it say? Always be prepared to give an answer for the hope that you have. Why? Because your life ought to demand an explanation. So my brothers and sisters of Gateway Church, as we enter into the second quarter, may you crave God's promises and God's presence. May you own the moment. May you declare God's promises. And number 4, may you live a life that demands an explanation. May you live a life that makes people say, Masavot. Now, what's incredible though about this entire thing is I think you all are in a unique spot, because how you choose to enter into the second quarter has huge significance for the third quarter, the fourth quarter, and what God has in store. Any coach would tell you that. And what's amazing is sometimes you might feel like we're down by 8 points, or sometimes you feel that you might be up by 9 points. Whatever it is, you have in a second quarter moment, you are with the coach, you are getting in this huddle, and the coach is beginning to say some words to you to try to encourage you to go to another level. Now, did you know that there was only the thought that white swans existed? Nobody had ever heard of a black swan before. But can we just ask you one question? How many black swans do you need to see to believe that they exist? 1. Why do I say this? Because I think the world needs to see a church who changes adversity into opportunity. I believe that the world needs to see a church that craves God's presence. I believe that the church needs to see a people who own the moment that they're in, that they won't stop, can't stop declaring God's promises and live a life that demands an explanation. And what's wild is I started to think about this, and all I could think about is this moment where Joshua, who didn't feel like he had what it takes to follow Moses, tells these priests, I heard from God. And God told me Rak Chazak, and he told me that we're gonna cross the Jordan River. But he told me that you as the priest holding the Ark of the Covenant, you all have to walk to the edge and put your feet in the water. And for the last few weeks, I've been praying for this church. I've been praying for a word that God would give me to speak to you as you enter into the second quarter. And I just had this visual. And I wonder if this hits any of you watching online, any of you in this room or at our campuses. I just wonder. I wonder if you were there and Joshua said to you, God's not done with us yet. He's taking us farther. He's taking us deeper. He's having us cross over. And I wonder if there'd be a moment where Joshua just looked at you and just said, would you put your feet in the water? Would you have the faith to put your feet in the water? And I'm asking you right now, and I'm not looking, I'm just asking you right now, if Joshua were to ask you, would you put your feet in the water, believing that God is not done with us yet? I'm gonna ask you that you would stand, if you are able, to your feet. If that would be you. If God would just whisper to you to say, man, you are holding on to his presence. You are gonna walk towards the edge because you believe that God has something in the second quarter for Gateway Church. Okay, I didn't expect that to happen, but now we're gonna have some fun. Here's the deal. I might never get invited back, but it's okay. Here's what I'm gonna do now, because the truth is you're about to leave this space and you are going into battle. And you are going in where the enemy is gonna wanna wage war against your soul. The enemy is gonna want you to live in the past or live with anxiety in the future. And I have this sense that if we were going to do this, then maybe we should just scream Rak Chazak at the top of our lungs. And so I know in kids ministry, they're loud and crazy, and sometimes we hear that. Now they're gonna hear us and they'll be like, what's mom and dad doing? But here's the thing I think about. I'm gonna just pray a blessing, and I'm gonna say something over a handful of opportunities that I believe Gateway has in Q2, in the second quarter. And then I'm gonna scream at the top of my lungs, Rak Chazak, and then I'm gonna point at you. And if you believe that, scream it back at me. Deal? All right, so here we go. Gateway Church. This church is about people. People. And I wanna start with the young people. I wanna start with the kids. I wanna start with the students. I wanna start with the passion. That our job as men and women is to pass on the story of God to the next generation. And this next generation is walking into a season that is so difficult, so uncertain, so hard. But we gotta proclaim to those kids and those students, the future leaders, the future pastors, the future people who will carry the banner of this church, to be strong and courageous. We need to remind them, Rak Chazak! And see, church, I'm telling you what, now we're getting really good. Now, church, I'm telling you, when I saw that video and there was 540 global partners, 106 countries represented, this story is not just for Texas. This story is for every country, every tribe, every nation. This word, to be strong and courageous, but it requires you having the faith. The faith to believe that the good news must go on beyond these walls, these doors, to continue the good work. And we need to remind our partners to be strong and courageous. We need to remind the churches that we share and partner with to be strong and courageous. We need to remind our global brothers and sisters, Rak Chazak! And I'm telling you, church, I'm telling you, you're gonna go in, and whenever you find yourself walking into battle, the enemy just wants to get you. And you're gonna walk out and you're gonna find yourself just getting on blessed way, and you're not gonna feel like giving someone the blessed way. Something else is gonna come over you. And I'm just reminding you, no. We are people who crave God's presence. We are people who will own the moment. We are people who will declare God's promises, and we are people who will live a life that demands an explanation. We are people who are strong and courageous. We are Rak Chazak! And so, with that, my brothers and sisters, this is the prayer I wrote a couple weeks ago, and I've just been saying it over and over again. My brothers and sisters of Gateway, may you crave God's presence. May you own the moment. May you declare God's promises. May your life demand an explanation. And as you enter into the second quarter, may you never stop screaming, Rak Chazak, grace and peace.